In the grounds of a farm, Oliver, his son Henry and young Tucker are guiding the flock of sheep back to the barn. Everything is going well, but Henry's older brother Angus is watching from afar, feeling jealous that he doesn't have the same skill as the young man in looking after the farm. What's more, he has a broken leg and is forced to stay at home all day. Because of this, he decides to take his anger out on his brother and goes to Henry's ram, Dudley, holding an axe in his hands. Minutes later, Henry returns to the farm on his motorcycle and looks for Dudley, but the ram is no longer there. He then goes to look inside the barn and is startled to see Dudley's remains being thrown from the roof. To make matters worse, his brother, wearing the poor animal's skin, advances towards the young man, who is very frightened. Shortly afterwards, one of the farm workers, Mrs. Mack, interrupts the two, saying that their father has been in a motorcycle accident and didn't survive. 15 years after this tragedy, Henry has moved to the big city and is coming to visit his late father's farm. However, due to the trauma of what his brother did in the past, he has developed a phobia of sheep and can't even get close to one. As he heads back to the farm, two environmental activists, Experience and Grant, are also on their way. They suspect that there is a laboratory there, where macabre experiments are carried out on animals, and they intend to get to the bottom of the story. A few minutes later, Henry arrives at his old house, but the place seems to be empty. He goes to look at the photos in his father's office, until someone points a shotgun at the back of his head. Luckily, it was Mrs. Mack who pointed the gun at him, and when she saw Henry, she apologized for thinking he was an intruder and hugged him. After catching up, Henry goes to look for his brother, who called him back just to buy his half of the farm. As soon as he meets him, Henry isn't sure if he really wants to sell the property, as it's the only reminder he has of his father. However, Angus promises to give him the money up front and calls him into his office to give him a check. Unbeknownst to them, the activists have just arrived at the farm and found the location of the laboratory. Nearby they see a scientist, Dr. Astrid Rush, together with a team of assistants, bringing a mysterious cargo. Seeing that the doctor and her group are distracted, Grant runs to check the shipment and finds 3 cylinders. However, the scientist discovers the intruder and orders her team to go after him, so Grant grabs one of the cylinders and runs off with Experience towards the forest. As soon as they manage to get some distance, the two take a closer look at the cylinder and realize that inside it is a genetically modified creature. With this, they can incriminate the owner of the farm and put an end to his experiments once and for all. However, Dr. Astrid and her assistants appear in the forest and continue searching for the 2 invaders. Grant runs ahead to lose them, but in the middle of his escape, he stumbles over a branch and drops the cylinder. After recovering, Grant looks for the container, but the fall has caused the glass to break and the creature inside has disappeared. Seconds later, it appears behind him, revealing itself to be a mutant sheep, and bites Grant's ear. After a lot of effort, Grant manages to break free from the creature and throws it away, but the bite leaves him infected and he starts to feel sick. At the same time, Henry has just signed the sale papers and asks what Angus intends to do with the property. He says that he is investing in agronomic science and will soon revolutionize the industry with his newest project. Now that the sales contract has been signed, Angus tells his brother to leave, but first, he's going to say goodbye to Mrs. Mack. She gives him his father's old trophy as a farewell present, when he won the competition for best sheep shearer in the region. Mrs. Mack also tells him that Henry's childhood friend, Tucker, is now the farm manager and asks him to show Henry the rest of the property. The two are happy to be reunited and continue their journey to the countryside, where the flock of sheep is located. However, the little mutant sheep has just arrived on the scene and begins to attract a lamb with its cry. The animal finds the strange creature crawling on the ground, but when it tries to approach, the mutant sheep bites its snout. Shortly afterwards, Tucker takes Henry out into the countryside with his truck, until they find the lamb standing in the middle of the road with its snout injured. Once again, Henry's phobia prevents him from approaching, but Tucker says it's all right and goes to take the lamb to the other side of the fence. As soon as the two get out of the car, Experience appears and, without them realizing it, she takes Tucker's rifle, which was inside the vehicle. With a gun pointed at both of them, she tells them to follow her into the woods and asks where Grant is. Neither of them knows who she's talking about, but Henry tells her that his brother, Angus, can help her find her partner. When she discovers that he is the brother of the owner of the farm, Experience becomes enraged and threatens to shoot him. The young woman doesn't know how to unlock it and Tucker offers to do it, but he quickly takes the gun back and, seeing that she's been tricked, the woman leaves. She continues to look for Grant, who is in another part of the forest, acting strangely because of the infection. Even though he is a defender of animals and the environment, the effect of the pathogen makes him lose control and he devours a small rabbit that was passing through the forest. In the meantime, Tucker and Henry return to the truck and encounter Experience once again. She apologizes for threatening them and reveals that she broke into the farm to stop bizarre experiments being carried out on the animals. Henry doesn't know what she's talking about, but before he can ask, Tucker notices smoke coming from the house of one of the employees, Mike. The three of them go there and find a pot of pasta on fire and the kitchen in a mess, as if there had been a confrontation inside the house. Tucker then looks for Mike, but instead of him, the same lamb with the injured snout appears. It advances towards the group, who try to hide in one of the rooms and find Mike, his throat completely devoured. The lamb then manages to cut a hole in the door with its head, forcing Tucker to eliminate the creature with a shot from his rifle. After this confrontation, the trio decide to leave, but find more sheep scattered outside the house. Luckily, they don't seem to be infected, but Henry still has his phobia and can't go near them. Experience then helps him face his fear and asks him to concentrate only on her voice. The plan works and the two are just getting to the truck when an infected sheep gets into the car and tries to bite Tucker. Quickly, Henry and Experience climb into the body and Tucker accelerates the car in an attempt to get rid of the animal. Henry tries to save his friend by activating a chainsaw that was in the body. However, the car starts to sway too much on the rough terrain and the insane man ends up dropping the chainsaw in the middle of the road. The confusion continues and, even though Tucker tries to get rid of the ram, it ends up biting his leg. Even so, the guy manages to break free and escapes to the wagon, with the vehicle heading uncontrollably towards the cliff. The truck is about to crash, but Henry, Experience, Tucker and their dog jump out of the car, which plunges into the lake. The group manages to escape, but they still need to get to the farm and figure out what's going on. Nearby, Grant wanders aimlessly around the estate and his body becomes increasingly affected by the pathogen. His teeth are changing and white hairs are growing on his face, like those of a sheep. While walking along the road, Grant crosses the path of Angus, who gets angry when he sees the guy standing in the middle of the road. He gets out of the car to make amends, but in an instinctive move, Grant bites the man's hand and runs off. Back with Henry and his companions, they make their way to the farm, but Tucker starts to feel sick because of the bite on his foot. He takes off his boot to check on the wound and is startled to see that his foot has turned into a sheep's foot. An antidote must be found quickly, or Tucker will turn into a sheep-human hybrid. The situation only gets more critical when, at the top of the mountain, more infected sheep appear and start chasing the group at high speed. Tucker orders his dog to run back home and, even though his foot is injured, he does his best to escape, along with Henry and Experience. After a lot of effort, they reach the secret laboratory and inside they find the hanging corpse of a sheep. The three of them are terrified by the experiments being carried out at the site, until they come across Angus and Dr. Astrid. Henry tries to warn his brother that the sheep are spreading an infection all over the place, but he doesn't believe him and says he's just trying to create genetically modified sheep. His goal is to present his creation to investors in a presentation and thus make his business even more profitable. Henry tries to insist and asks Tucker to show him what the infection has done to his foot, but the doctor injects him with a tranquilizer and knocks him to the ground. Henry tries to help his friend, but Tucker sends him an Experience fleeing from the laboratory. With no choice, the two flee and are once again chased by the sheep, who corner them in the pit where the remains of the experiments are dumped. Angus appears soon after and Henry asks his brother to help him, but he refuses, saying that they won't get in the way of his plans. With the sheep getting closer and closer, the two of them end up slipping down the well and falling among the pieces of various animals. Now all they have to do is follow the tunnel in search of the exit and Experience lights a candle to light the way. When they reach the end of the tunnel, they find only a small opening through which they can pass, but the young woman refuses to go in. Just as Henry is afraid of sheep, Experience is claustrophobic and doesn't have the courage to cross the pit. Things only get worse when they hear the sound of sheep, indicating that they have jumped into the pit and are coming after them. Henry then calms her down, telling her to concentrate on his voice, just as she helped him face his fear. Thanks to this, the young girl also fights her fear and continues down the small tunnel, but the sheep approach and try to bite Henry's foot. The young woman manages to reach the exit and pulls Henry out, with the sheep getting stuck on the other side of the tunnel. He then finishes them off by throwing the candle and setting them all on fire, with Experience thanking him for saving her life. Finally, Henry and Experience manage to get out of the tunnel and run to a stable to wash up. Suddenly, they hear a strange sound inside and, when they go to investigate, they come across a huge hybrid of human and sheep, which starts advancing towards them. However, Experience notices that the creature is wearing the same clothes as her colleague, indicating that it is Grant. The infection has turned him into a hybrid and the young woman tries to make her colleague remember her, but he ignores her and throws Henry away with a single blow. Experience helps him and the two run out of the stable, with Henry locking the door on the other side and leaving the hybrid trapped inside. They manage to escape from the monster, but Henry fears that his friend Tucker will also undergo the same transformation. As expected, in the laboratory, Tucker is already starting to transform, with his teeth taking on a sheep-like shape. The doctor collects some of the antidote to test, but before applying it, she decides to wait and see how the guinea pig will react to the pathogen. After a few minutes, Tucker turns into a hybrid of human and sheep, just as Grant did. Soon after, the doctor injects the antidote and manages to reverse the transformation, returning her guinea pig to normal. The doctor is satisfied with the results of her research and takes a sample from Tucker in order to replicate the effects. However, as soon as she leaves the laboratory, she finds her assistant being devoured by the infected sheep. The scientist then tries to flee towards the forest, but ends up getting her feet stuck in a mud puddle. As she tries to get up, she sees the feet of an infected sheep which, without hesitation, begins to devour her. Meanwhile, Angus returns to the farm and gets ready for the presentation of his project to investors. However, when he looks in the mirror, his face is paler than usual and the bite on his hand is getting worse. Nevertheless, he makes his way to the stage and presents the results of his revolutionary experiments to his guests. Finally, Angus orders his assistants to open the compartment on stage, and inside is Oldfield, a sheep created completely in a laboratory. Everyone is impressed by the animal, but Oldfield starts screaming non-stop, as if something bad is about to happen. This soon becomes true when dozens of infected sheep invade the show, attacking everyone who crosses their path. A bloodbath breaks out and, unable to stop it, Angus tries to escape, along with Oldfield. On the run, he comes across another infected sheep, but instead of attacking him, she just lets him go and walks away. Angus finds this strange, but when he looks at the wound, he realizes that his hand has turned into a huge sheep's foot. Everything indicates that the creatures don't attack those who have been infected, and soon, he too will become a hybrid. Shortly afterwards, Henry and Experience also arrive on the scene and witness the sheep attack, when Mrs. Mack appears in her car. She takes them back to the farm and, on the road, they find the path full of carnivorous sheep. When night falls, they get home and try to call for help on the kitchen phone, but all the lines are inactive. Then Grant bursts in and knocks Henry out with a shove. In desperation, he tries to fight back by grabbing Mrs. Mack's shotgun, but she is unarmed and the hybrid knocks him to the ground. Henry can no longer defend himself, but Experience saves him by shoving a stick through Grant's neck and knocking him unconscious. They manage to win this confrontation, but the infected sheep soon begin to surround the place and will soon invade the house. Experience and Henry use the furniture to barricade the door, and Mrs. Mack warns them that there is a phone in Angus' office. Henry rushes there and, to his surprise, finds his brother and Oldfield hiding inside. He is furious that his brother's actions have caused all this trouble and, seeing that he won't help, decides to resolve the matter himself. So, taking his father's old rifle, he vows to finish them all off, starting with Oldfield. However, Angus stands in front of the sheep, saying that he won't let it perish, because the sheep was created using his genes. What's more, he shows that he has also been bitten and will soon become part of the flock with the sheep. After hearing all this, Henry threatens to shoot his brother, but at the last minute, he returns the rifle and goes to meet Mrs. Mack and Experience. He calls the two of them to run away, but first he takes back his father's old trophy. When they reach the exit of the house, the three see the place surrounded by sheep and, in the middle of them, Angus and Oldfield flee towards their private airstrip. Henry deduces that his brother intends to flee the city in his plane, but if he does, more places will be infected by the virus. He then decides to stop his brother, but when he looks at his arm, he realizes that he was also bitten during the confrontation with Grant. Seeing that it's a risk for Mrs. Mack and Experience, he leaves them in the car and tells them to get out of there. Once again, the young woman is surprised by Henry's courage and kisses him back, asking him to come back as soon as possible. Now Henry has to think of a way to get past the sheep unnoticed and spots fur coats on the car seats. Wearing them, Henry tries to pass himself off as a sheep among the flock, and fearing discovery, he uses his father's trophy and shoves it into one of the animals, causing it to move away. With that, his identity is revealed, but thanks to the infection spreading through his body, the sheep and hybrids let him pass. In addition to him, Mrs. Mack and Experience decide to help Henry and, with the car and armed with a shotgun, they set off shooting the sheep. Nearby, Angus starts the plane to escape with Oldfield, but the infection reaches its limit and he begins to transform into a hybrid. His teeth start to fall out, his face deforms and his hands turn into sheep's feet. As he screams in pain from the changes in his body, Henry arrives on the scene and looks for his brother inside the warehouse. Suddenly, Angus attacks him by surprise and corners him against the wall, revealing his new hybrid form. Henry tries to make his brother remember himself and says that if he hadn't done that when they were kids, the two of them could have looked after the farm together. Angus doesn't listen and continues to attack him, so Henry is forced to put the trophy around his neck. Still, this isn't enough to stop him and the transformation intensifies, with Angus turning into a stronger than usual hybrid. Henry then tries to grab the rifle, but the monster disarms him with a blow and pushes him away. At the same moment, Angus' plane starts circling the runway and Henry decides to use this to his advantage to defeat the monster. In addition, Tucker's little dog appears and, with his barking, he manages to attract the hybrid's attention. Henry asks him to keep doing this so that Angus doesn't notice the plane approaching behind him. The strategy works and the monster is torn apart by the plane's propellers and falls, no longer able to fight. Afterwards, Henry realizes that his arm is starting to manifest the transformation and gets distracted, with Angus getting up behind him and about to attack again. Luckily, Tucker appears on the scene in a jeep and advances towards Angus, pouring a substance into his snout. He then does the same to Henry, who begins to have a strong physical reaction, but soon recovers and is cured of the infection. Tucker explains that he managed to get the antidote from the lab and now they can get everyone back to normal. Angus has also had his transformation reversed, but he's lying on the ground with serious injuries. They leave him on the ground and, when they find Experience again, they explain everything that has happened. Now they have to gather all the sheep in the barn and inject the antidote, but there isn't enough for all of them. Then Henry appears and, even though he's wounded, he tries to control the sheep because he's still willing to go ahead with his plan. However, as he is free of the infection, the sheep no longer recognize him and begin to devour him alive. With his brother perished, Henry lights his lighter and throws it among the infected sheep, burning them all at the same time. The next morning, Henry and his friends catch all the infected hybrids and start curing them with the antidote. Among them is Grant, who has finally returned to normal, but regrets having devoured other animals while transformed. In the end, Henry decides to stay on his father's farm, alongside Experience and Tucker. In addition to them, Tucker's dog remains vigilant on the property, but instead of barking, he ends up bleating like a sheep, indicating that he has also been infected.
Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.